the woman who couldn't spell. The soft hush of evening had fallen, bringing with it the time for reflection. For a certain gentleman, whom we shall call Leo. Yes, Leo. Tonight, Leo found his mind wandering not to grand philosophical questions, but to a rather specific, very recent interaction. Leo had been, shall we say, interacting with someone new. A woman. She seemed perfectly nice. She had a pleasant laugh. Her conversation was engaging. They had even agreed to meet up for a casual date tomorrow evening. Everything, by all accounts, was proceeding normally. But Leo's mind, being the intricate, overthinking mechanism that it was, had seized upon a detail. A small, almost microscopic detail. It had happened earlier in the week, in a text message exchange. He had been discussing a hypothetical game, a scenario where one might lose a point. And her reply had come through, "Oh, you don't want to lose that point." Leo had stared at his phone. He blinked. He reread the message. LOOSE. Not LOSE. A tiny, almost imperceptible tremor went through his very logical, very organized brain. It was a common misspelling, he knew. A frequent culprit in the grand lexicon of minor linguistic errors. But it was there, staring at him, in black and white pixels. He had tried to brush it off. It's just a typo, he told himself. Everyone makes mistakes. Autocorrect is a menace. But a tiny, insistent voice in the back of his mind had whispered, "But lose? As in, not tight? As in, morally lax? Is that what she meant?" No, of course not. But still. Now, as evening settled, the impending date loomed. He thought of her pleasant laugh, her engaging conversation. And then, like a persistent gnat, the word loose would flutter into his mental vision. Is it a deal-breaker? He asked himself, internally, with great seriousness. Can I truly connect with someone who consistently misspells such a fundamental verb? What if we have children? Will they learn to lose important games? What if we're playing Scrabble? The horror. Honestly, the sheer, disproportionate weight you can assign to a single, minor grammatical error. It's truly astounding. It's like a tiny speck of dust on a perfectly polished mirror, and suddenly, that speck is all you can see. Not my mirror, of course. Leo's mirror. My very grammatically sensitive friend, Leo. He knew it was ridiculous. He knew it was petty. He knew it was unfair. She was, objectively, a perfectly good person. But his brain, with its rigid adherence to rules and its obsessive need for order, just couldn't quite let it go. It clung to that loose like a burr on a wool sock. He considered cancelling the date. I'm suddenly feeling ill, he could text. But then what? Would he then spend the evening alone, contemplating the delicate nuances of lose versus loose in silent, self-righteous solitude? Probably. He imagined the date. She would smile. She would laugh. She would say something charming. And then, his mind would sneakily insert a tiny, phantom loose into every sentence, just to torment him. He'd find himself subtly analyzing her spoken word choices, listening for any verbal missteps. It was a terrible thought. And then, a different thought occurred to him. A quieter thought. What if? What if it didn't actually matter? What if a small, insignificant flaw in text communication was just that, small and insignificant? What if the sum of a person was far greater than the occasional grammatical slip? What if true connection wasn't about perfect spelling, but about shared laughter, and genuine conversation, and the ability to forgive tiny, irrelevant quirks? He looked out his window at the stars. They were not perfectly aligned. They did not spell out words, correctly or incorrectly. They simply shone, vast and indifferent to human pedantry. And as Leo, my subtly judgmental friend, drifted off to sleep that night, the nagging image of loose began to fade. He didn't dream of spelling bees or grammar textbooks. He dreamed of quiet conversations, and shared smiles, and the blissful feeling of simply letting go of something so utterly unimportant. So, if you ever find yourself fixating on a tiny flaw, a minor imperfection, or a frustrating grammatical error, remember Leo. Remember that sometimes, our brains get hung up on the silliest things. But also remember that true value is rarely found in absolute perfection. And the path to a peaceful night's sleep, and perhaps even genuine connection, often begins with the willingness to simply let things be.